following case has never been solved. 5 children vanished on the night of December 24th, 1945. No remains were ever found, no arrests were ever made, and for the rest of their lives, their parents refused to believe they were dead. This is the story of the Sodder family, and it is one of the most disturbing, unsolved mysteries in American history. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant who had built a good life for himself in Fayetteville, West Virginia. He owned a trucking business, had a large property outside of town, and had built a comfortable 2-story house for his family. He and his wife Jenny had 10 children together. By Christmas Eve of 1945, the family was complete, happy, and preparing for the holiday. That night, the children went to bed late. It was Christmas Eve, and George allowed them to stay up past their usual bedtime. He went to bed around midnight. Jenny followed shortly after. At 1 a.m, the phone rang. Jenny answered. A woman's voice she did not recognise asked for someone who did not live there. Jenny told her she had the wrong number. The woman laughed. A strange laugh, Jenny would later describe it. Not embarrassed, not apologetic, just laughing. Then she hung up. Jenny went back to bed. At approximately 1:30 a.m, she woke up to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. George and Jenny managed to get 4 of their children out. They ran back in for the others. The stairs had already collapsed. The fire was spreading faster than any fire Jenny had ever seen, faster than seemed possible for a house that had been standing just minutes before. George ran outside and tried to get a ladder from the side of the house to reach the upper windows. The ladder was gone. He had left it leaning against the house that evening. It was gone. He tried to drive his truck under the window to climb up and reach the children. Both trucks would not start. They had been running perfectly that afternoon. He tried to find a water supply to fight the fire. The water barrel he kept outside was empty and frozen solid. Within 45 minutes, the house was gone, reduced entirely to ash and rubble, and the bodies of 5 children were never found. Maurice, age 14, Martha, age 12, Louis, age 9, Jenny, age 8, Betty, age 5, 5 children, gone, and nothing left behind. The fire chief ruled it an accidental fire, cause unknown, and declared that the children had perished in the blaze, and their bodies had been cremated by the intensity of the heat. George Sodder did not believe it. He had seen the remains of house fires before. He knew that a fire hot enough to completely incinerate 5 human bodies, including their bones, would have taken far longer than 45 minutes and burned at temperatures far beyond what a residential house fire could produce. He asked investigators how this was possible. He received no satisfactory answer. He hired a professional investigator. The investigator found human vertebrae in the rubble. The local crematorium examined them and determined they had not been exposed to extreme heat. They were not charred, they did not belong to children, and the crematorium noted that they appeared to have been placed in the rubble after the fire, not burned in it. The vertebrae were buried without further investigation, and later could not be located. George Sodder began digging through the rubble himself. He found no bones, no teeth, no metal from belt buckles or zippers or shoes. Nothing that should have remained if 5 children had died in that fire. He found a green rubber ball that belonged to one of the children, completely undamaged, sitting in the ash. He found a portion of a liver, intact, that had not been burned. Nothing about this fire made sense. Then the witnesses started coming forward. A woman reported seeing a man outside the Sodder property on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, studying the house and the layout of the property. She had never seen him before and never saw him again. A local woman reported that on the night of the fire, long after the house had burned, she saw a car driving away from the property. Inside the car, pressed against the rear window, were the faces of children, looking back at the house, looking back at what had been their home. A woman at a nearby motel reported that on Christmas morning, a man had checked in with 5 children who appeared frightened and exhausted and did not speak. She had thought it was strange. She had not reported it at the time. The Sodder family never accepted the official conclusion. George and Jenny built a new house on the same property, smaller this time, and for the rest of their lives they kept a large billboard erected in their front yard, facing the road. The billboard showed photographs of the 5 missing children and asked for information about their whereabouts. It offered a reward. It stood for decades, weathering every storm, fading and being repainted, always there. A permanent public declaration that George and Jenny Sodder did not believe their children were dead. George Sodder died in 1968, still believing his children were alive somewhere. Jenny Sodder continued maintaining the billboard until her own death in 1989. Over 40 years she never stopped looking. In 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, the family received a letter in the mail. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed a man in his 30s, dark-haired, looking directly at the camera with an expression that the surviving Sodder children described as unmistakable. They believed without hesitation that it was their brother Louis, aged 9 when he disappeared, now grown. On the back of the photograph were 4 words: Louis Sodder, I love brother. There was no return address. The postmark indicated it had been mailed from somewhere in Kentucky. No other communication ever came. The photograph was turned over to investigators. Nothing came of it. The case was never reopened. The file was eventually closed. The 5 Sodder children have never been found. No explanation for the fire has ever been confirmed. No one has ever been charged with anything. The billboard stood in front of that West Virginia property for decades, slowly fading, the faces of 5 children looking out at every passing car, asking a question that was never answered. What happened to us? If you know anything about the Sodder children, any information, no matter how small, has always been welcomed by the surviving family members. Some questions deserve to stay open. Subscribe if this case disturbed you as much as it disturbs me. New story tomorrow night. Don't watch alone.